Hi, welcome to Chatty Kathy. Michael Ramirez is a two-time Pulitzer Prize winner. He's a senior editor and the editorial cartoonist for Investors Business Daily. He's an author of the book, Give Me Liberty or Give Me Obamacare. I am so excited that I'm getting to interview, and mainly because you're a fellow artist.
Artist is actually the nicest thing I've been called all week.
Oh, really? What were you called?
Well, names that you can't really mention on television. I told my mom to stop calling me names, so.
Okay, so it was your mother. Speaking of your mother, you're from Japan.
I was born in Tokyo, Japan, actually. My dad was in the Army for 23 years, which is how he met my mother in Japan. My dad was half Spanish and half Mexican. So I'm actually 1/4 Spanish, 1/4 Mexican, half Japanese, and completely confused.
Okay, well, hopefully you've grown out of the confusion.
Yes.
You have doctors in your family?
Yeah, you know
doctors?
what? You know, Kath, I'm the black sheep of the family. In fact, I went to school originally at the University of California, Irvine. I wanted to be a cardiovascular surgeon, and I've said before in interviews that and when you think of President Obama winning a Nobel Peace Prize for doing absolutely nothing, I think I should get one for all the lives I saved by being a journalist instead of being a cardiovascular surgeon.
And he doesn't deserve it, but you do. I mentioned earlier that you have this book called Give Me Liberty or Give Me Obamacare. Did you come up with this title, or did the publisher?
I did. We had different ideas for the title. We thought of an illustrated guide to impeachment. We thought of conservatives are from Mars, liberals are from Uranus. That didn't fly.
Oh, no, that's funny.
But you know what? This is the perfect title, because really what it's about is the failure of the Obama administration and all its various policies, whether it's domestic or foreign, and how we're switching from really a nation of achievement to a nation of entitlement.
Exactly. And we're paying for it.
Right, absolutely.
And people think it's free.
Right. I mean, right now it's $18 trillion and counting. So it's growing by the day. You know, it was kind of funny watching the president's State of the Union speech. He mentioned how the deficits were cut during his administration. And of course, he failed to mention that he's also the one that grew it to the historic proportions. I think it was $1.3 trillion in deficits.
Well, I learned something from you, that all the presidents combined, it was $5 trillion, and then Bush, George W. maybe, it was $5 trillion, but then Obama, it's nearly $20 trillion.
He's added $8 trillion.
Yeah,
$8 trillion, and it's counting. It'll probably be up to $20 trillion by the time that he's left office, because we've taken the ceiling off the debt. And now add this to it, these two elements. One, we've got another $120 trillion in unfunded liabilities from entitlements. And then when you look at our demographic growth, as far as the population goes, we have an upside down pyramid, because we've got a population that's growing much, much older, but the reduction in population growth is adding less workers. So at the time where we need these entitlements the most, the population is actually shrinking. And then you look at the base, you know, everybody talks about unemployment being at 5%, but of course, we have a 30-year low when it comes to labor participation rate. The very people that we need to actually get full-time jobs, everybody from 18 to 25, that number is shrinking.
Right.
At the same time where the entitlements and the need to fund these entitlements are growing.
Okay, so you know a lot, apparently.
I'm making all this stuff up.
Yeah, no, I know that you check your facts and stuff, and your cartoons reflect that.
Thanks.
But when you were younger, when did you realize?
Are you saying I'm old? Is that
you're
the point you're
trying
trying
to?
to?
Okay. I shouldn't reveal that, but you are. When you were a kid, when did you discover first that you were artistic, and secondly that you like to do cartoons, and thirdly, how did you get into history and politics?
History and politics first. I've always had this thirst for knowledge. Yeah, and every morning we would read the Los Angeles Times and the Orange County Register. I drew a lot up until the 6th grade. I've always had this ability to look at things and be able to recreate them. And I just thought it was very odd that people couldn't do that. So I didn't really think there was anything exceptional about it. And in fact, in the 6th grade, we had an art contest where I drew Rodin's The Thinker statue. I did a drawing of it. And I sort of got disqualified because they didn't think that I drew it. That kind of turned me off on art. And to be honest with you, I discovered surfing, and so I trended away from doing art and more toward wasting my time at the beach.
I don't think it's a waste.
Yeah, no, I love it. I love it.
I used to surf 4 to 8 hours a day.
Oh, you know what? The wonderful thing about having a dad who was in the military, I could drive right up on the beach in San
Oh, 'cause you had
Onofre
the
because Camp
pass?
Pendleton was right next to Trestles, and I had the military ID, so I could just drive right up onto the beach.
Are you going to surf while you're here in Hawaii?
Maybe in Maui.
Oh,
we'll
okay,
see.
there you go.
Yeah.
It'll be fun.
Although I heard the North Shore's got 30 or
Huge.
40-foot waves. So.
We live right next to the beach, and we can feel it,
Yeah, I
like
bet.
pounding our house, like it just shakes.
Now, I'm a big wimp. Anything over 15 feet, I'm a spectator.
Let me just clarify. You have a degree. Is it in fine arts?
Yeah, I do have a couple.
A couple, okay.
Yeah, fine arts studio painting. But when I went to school, I was actually a biological science major. I was biological science, fine arts studio painting, and art history. And it's funny because the latter two, I only took it because, as I said before, my brothers and sisters are all doctors. And so they sort of told me the path to getting into medical school. And the only reason why I took the latter two in art was to shore up my credentials to get into medical school. In fact, that's how I got into political cartooning. The only reason why I was into journalism was in high school we had a closed campus. The only way you could get off campus, well, there are two ways. One, if you had an office pass, and two, if you had a press pass. And the person in charge of the press pass was the student editor of the newspaper. So, of course, I was the student editor of the newspaper. And anytime the waves got over 4 foot, I'd have to go down to the beach and report on it. So I'd have to write myself a pass and, of course, go down to the beach and go surfing. And the ulterior motive was not only surfing, but I found out quickly that if you write to production companies, both in music and in movies, that you could get free passes to things. I continued to do it in college. And one day I was carrying a painting that I was working in, and I used to write editorials and stuff. And I came in to file a story, and my editor saw the painting and said, why don't you do a political cartoon on the student election? And so I interviewed all the candidates, and none of them really had a substantive reason for running. And so I made fun of all of them. And it was funny, the day that cartoon came out, the protests erupted. We had 3 days worth of protests over this cartoon. And I realized all these times I'd been writing these hard-hitting editorials and nobody cared. But you draw one picture and half the campus hates you. How great is that? But it was a local newspaper, the Newport Incident in Newport Beach, that actually offered me a job right after I started doing political cartoons. It was on my way to one of my favorite surfing beaches, and I had this long break between Bio 101 and organic chemistry, and I would just go down to the newspaper office and whip out a cartoon in half an hour and still get time to go surfing. And it worked out pretty well. And then there was an incident in my junior year in college where this guy got pulled over by the Newport Beach police. They arrested him for drunk driving, didn't allow him a phone call, kind of roughed him up a little bit. And it turned out he was a Newport City councilman who didn't drink. And so that was a great added element to the cartoon. So I drew this cartoon where I had this guy, he was hogtied on the hood of a police car with his shoe wedged in his mouth. And the arresting officer was explaining to this desk sergeant, I was merely reinforcing his constitutional right to remain silent.
Oh, wow.
The police chief came down to the office and he yelled at the publisher, he yelled at the editor, and then he tried to find out where I lived, and suddenly it dawned on me, what a profound impact these drawings have. And I think that was the moment that I fell in love with the art.
Do people threaten your life?
But the first death threat I got was when I graduated from UCI. I told my parents I was going to take a year off from medical school to become a political cartoonist, and they threatened to kill me. So.
Okay, that's good. I didn't see that coming.
Thanks.
Okay, but luckily you have doctors in the family, so
Yes,
they can
yes.
take care of you if your parents try to kill you.
That's
But-
right. So if I get injured during this interview, they're just one phone call away.
Okay, that's good.
Right.
But in reality,
They do.
in
they
this
do.
country or other countries?
I haven't gotten really death threats from other countries, although I get this Arabic scribes that I have no idea what it says.
You know Japanese, but you don't know.
Yeah,
Okay.
my Arabic is pretty bad. But when I was at the LA Times, I had Paul Conrad's old office, and people write nasty notes to you, and they think it's going to hurt your feelings, but we kind of wear them as medals. It's like, if I can make somebody mad enough where they'll sit down and write a letter on me, then I've accomplished something. So I would take these letters and I would just tape them to the wall. By the time I left the LA Times, and that was only 7.5 years, it was about 3 layers thick. And
Wow.
every once in a while you get those letters that, where they meticulously cut out the letters and compose the
Wow.
a note, and you kind of have to forward those to the police. And in Memphis, Tennessee, when I worked there, I was working with USA Today. I was working upstairs, and I had no clue that the alarms were going off, and they were actually evacuating the entire building. I'm drawing my cartoon, and finally the security guard came up to my office and said, "Hey, Mr. Ramirez, you have to leave. And I said, well, what's going on? Is there a fire or something? And he goes, I don't know, but you have to evacuate the building. So I leave the building and I get a standing ovation from everybody. And it turns out somebody called in a bomb threat because of my cartoon. And you know, people just, they get very emotional about these ideas.
Those would be crazy people.
They are crazy. It's actually my editor, but not
Yes, really? Okay, so as far as your art goes, again, I'm an artist, so I'm very interested in that topic. You mentioned a half an hour you whipped out a cartoon, but for the ones that are published, how long does it take, and what's your process?
The process is like any other editorialist. Research analyst is my job. And now in my added capacity at Investors Business Daily, I co-manage the editorial page. And so I have to prepare for an 8 to 10 o'clock editorial meeting every morning. So I usually wake up around 5, you know, I read my papers. I've got about 3 or 4 that I read. Look at all the different blogs, look at the websites. I think Drudge is a good website.
Yeah, that's who we go to.
Yeah, you know, because most of the news, I think, is hinged on what Drudge runs on there. But there are other websites as well. You know, if I want a good laugh, I'll go to MSNBC and see what they're doing. And then I do watch television at every half hour to sort of see what's on the cusp of the American consciousness, because you cannot draw cartoons that people are unfamiliar with. Once you pick the topic, you go into research mode to substantiate the cartoon, because I don't do anything that I don't believe in, absolutely. We do the editorial meeting from 8 to 10. From 10 on, I may be talking to writers or talking to some of my colleagues or taking a jacuzzi. I'm just kidding. But I'll sit there and read more about it and sort of narrow down what the ideas are going to be. And usually I have about 15 ideas per day.
Right.
I have really from noon to 3 to turn a cartoon around. It takes me about an hour to do the black and white and scan it into the computer, and about another hour to do color.
You just sort of freehand stuff, or using images?
It's a combination of both. Because when you think about it, editorial cartooning is sort of like television advertising. You got 5 seconds to capture their attention, and another 5 seconds to deliver the product that you're selling. In my case, the product's a message. It's familiarity. Whatever device I can use that will sell the product the best. What mechanism can I use that will get into your head and become the catalyst for thought? You know, a while ago when the Iranians had captured the U.S. servicemen, that image, the photograph of the guys sitting on their knees, that's going to be an image that people will remember, so I will recreate that. And this is one of my favorite ones. Obama's surrounded by a contingent of people, and he's saying he certainly has a lot of Secret Service for protection, and the guy's saying those are journalists. Someday all this will be yours. You know, it's simple images like this that I think translate well. I'm putting together my Pulitzer entry, and one of them is actually Weekend and Bernie's. I've got Hillary as the dead person.
That is so good.
And I've got Bernie holding on one arm, and I've got the donkey holding on the other arm.
Okay, that's great. Okay, now this one is excellent.
Right, Mr. President, you may not believe in radical Islam, but radical Islam believes in you.
Where'd you get that image?
It came out of my evil mind.
Yes.
That's why I never sleep, because I think of these things. The minute I go to sleep, I wake up screaming, and I yell out Obama. No,
I do really think this. Jerry Seinfeld, the way he looks at life and notices all those little intricacies, the things that are right under our nose and that we don't even think about, he notices. And I was thinking that's how you are. When I look at your cartoons, I think to myself, wow, how did he even come up with this? Like, it's so obvious. But I could never have come up with that.
Well,
so it's a total gift.
You know, I have the luxury of saying what everybody else thinks, really. And that's
like
a connection that you make. Yeah, no, absolutely. Everybody will think of the same obvious ideas. But if you can make it a little bit different, a little unique, that'll stand out, then people will remember it. Well, the bottom line is, you know, as an editorialist, we want to produce change. We want to have an impact in the political, you know, dialogue that's going out there, which is why we are doing TV shows in Hawaii to reach more people.
There you go. Of all the presidents and politicians, who is it that stands out the most and makes for better cartoons?
Grover Cleveland. I don't know why, but Grover Cleveland. No, I'm just kidding. I almost openly wept when Joe Biden dropped out of the presidential race. Really, people ask me, how do I come up with my cartoon ideas with the Obama administration? It's more like stenography than anything creative.
It seems unbelievable when they voted for him twice.
Yeah.
How can this even happen? And now Hillary and Bernie.
I know. I mean, think about it. In the Democratic Party, I mean, you basically have a socialist and a kook running for president. If the socialist doesn't get thrown in jail for her emails, we might end up with the kook.
Right. Remember when John McCain was running and everyone made such a big deal about his age, and Bernie Sanders and Hillary are really old.
I know. They're like 128
They're
years old.
120.
Yeah.
Who have been your prime?
You know, I have
guys.
to say, I love the Bill Clinton administration. He was so great. Some of my favorite cartoons from my first book. Everyone has the right to my opinion.
Do
if
they?
You have a chance. Yeah. When I won my first Pulitzer, I actually got a letter from the president congratulating me on the Pulitzer. So I gathered all my Clinton cartoons, and I wrote a little note that said, thank you, I couldn't have done it without you. And I sent it back to the White House, and I thought it was funny.
This is true?
Yeah, it's true.
Okay,
I
it's
thought
not
it was
a joke.
funny. And then I was audited 4 months later by the IRS.
What?
Now, I'm not saying one happened because of the other, but it's very curious.
It is curious.
Yeah.
So you're a conservative, aren't you?
Yes, I'm
And
an
when-
unabashed conservative.
Okay. When did you become a conservative? Was it early on?
You know, I think I was born a conservative.
Okay.
And the influences
think
of
I
my
was.
life were very conservative. I mean, when you think about it, the Japanese, you know, the familial relationships, the sense of self-responsibility, those are very conservative values. My dad was a devout Roman Catholic, and I think a lot of that probably rubbed off on me as well.
Do you ever go after the right?
I'm an equal opportunity offender. It's not about personalities. It's not even about parties or broad political philosophy. You know, it's really about the merits of the issue, because these things have a profound effect on our lives. I
They
think
do.
these days, because of political celebrity, we're lulled into thinking it is we who work for the politicians, when it's
I know,
meant to
they
be the
work
other
for
way
us.
around. And we have to remember that in a self-governing democratic republic, it's the people's responsibility to be informed and to make sure that these people are doing our bidding. So that's basically my job.
Your father was, you said, 23 years in the Army. Were you in the service?
No.
Oh.
No.
But you go to the Middle East. Are 9 of you
Yes.
cartoonists? 3 tour?
8 of them were released from Gitmo. That was the only thing that.
Okay.
But no, we were just in Baghdad. You know what? Our troops are amazing people, and they're so young, and they're so smart, and they're so good at what they're doing. You know, I was in Baghdad 9 months after the surge, in the middle of the Iraq War, the time before, and I felt a lot safer then than I did this last trip. And everything the Obama administration has done has undermined the process of democracy in Iraq, and really created chaos in that entire region. You know, we went up to Kurdistan. They're mad because the one people that are actually fighting ISIS has been abandoned by this administration. At the time, you had Russian missiles that were flying over Iraqi territory. It's really this void that this president has left in the world because of his lack of leadership, because
Right.
he's leading from his behind. You know, the volatility that's going to result from a nuclear Iran. You're going to introduce a nuclear arms race in a region that's awash in oil money, that has little sensitivity for human life and will sell anything.
Right.
And they have surrogates of evil. So now we've got 9 nuclear nations. Now there are already 13 additional nations in that area, in the African continent and the Middle East, that are pursuing nuclear technology today. You're going to have 21, 22 nuclear powers out there, people that don't believe life is that important,
Exactly.
that will sell anything, that want these surrogates of evil to create chaos. It's going to be a very dangerous world. You know, I have to kind of brag. The National Review, when they did my book review, they actually called my introduction the best factual takedown of the Obama administration written yet. The reason why President Obama doesn't see the enemy coming from foreign sources, there's a total disregard for the external threats. It's because he believes the threat comes internally. President Obama thinks that America is the problem,
Right.
that we're the source of all the fundamental problems in the world. And he completely ignores the threat from ISIS. 9/11 was, you had 19 guys that were funded by Saudi millionaires.
Right.
And of course, we didn't have the travel restrictions that we have now, but so they had traveling visas. Now we've got 36 to 50,000 ISIS fighters, and they're not the same ISIS fighters. They're the guys that are rotating through, and they're basically being trained how to murder and kill people, and then being sent back to their host countries. This administration, the Obama administration, has done nothing to figure out who these people are that are going over there and who the people are that are coming back. They have about $1.2 million in revenue from oil and criminal activity per day. Some say
Wow.
much even more than that. And so anybody who believes that there isn't a bigger threat to America today than before 9/11 is out of their minds.
Didn't he just say that?
Well, he tried to, but he didn't say it as eloquently as
As
I
that
did.
you did. Okay. The State of the Union was just the other night,
Yeah.
and You have a recent caricature.
This cartoon was, they left an empty seat in honor of the people that have died from guns, basically. I thought what the empty seat really represented was Obama's accomplishments.
And he's an empty suit.
That's exactly it. In fact, the Weekly Standard cartoon that just came out on that is that exact idea.
They did that? Was that after yours?
I do both the Weekly Standard and IBD.
So you did two.
So I did both cartoons.
Okay.
Yeah. So I did the empty seat and the empty suit as well. You see, you're political cartoons. In fact, I quit. I'm going to let you do it.
Please don't. I would not be good at that.
Okay.
On your Facebook, I noticed that people will write to you, and you're always so polite to them.
You know, the luxury of my job is it allows me to meet a lot of people. So I have a lot of friends everywhere. And I really like, I like people. And being in California, really, we're an island of conservatism in Orange County, surrounded by progressive ideas. It's nice on Facebook to find like-minded people that actually, you know, are intelligent, that have a broader view of the world, that we can sort of commiserate with. Because the last 6.5 years has been horrible for America. We're moving far away from our constitutional foundation. Look, you have to change the structure of what's going on because the progressives are very, very smart. They've taken over the educational system. They're reasserting these progressive ideas and sort of brainwashing the children and taking away our history, undermining the American ideals through education and through propaganda. They do that even more so in the upper grades and in college.
Exactly.
And then they've taken over popular culture. So these ideas, these false ideas, are reinforced in popular culture. And then the third element, which is the mainstream media, instead of being an objective observer, is validating all these false ideas. Look, if you don't do something about all three of those pillars of influence, then you're going to lose this country. De Tocqueville said that the republic ends when the Congress learns that they can bribe the people with their own money. 47% of Americans, you know, do not pay federal taxes, do not make any kind of contributions. You get over that 50% threshold where more people are taking and receiving from the government than contributing, you won't get those people back. The dynamics of America is a belief in the individual and the people can achieve great things if the government will get out of the way.
Michael, is there a place where people can read about you and
it's
or
right
find
off
out
the
about your book?
Licky Highway. If you take the second right. No.
What if they can't get to Hawaii?
Oh well, then
for the rest of the nation.
There's also a little substation in the mainland.
Okay.
Yeah, no, there's a place you can read my cartoons every day if you go to investors.com/cartoons.
Okay.
You can get me at Twitter at Ramirez Tunes, and on Facebook at Michael Ramirez _political cartoonist.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for coming in and doing the
for
show,
having me
especially
on.
when you just arrived
I know.
from California. And I hope you have a really good stay in Hawaii.
Well, you know, I always have a great stay in Hawaii. I just love Hawaii. Hawaii is a great place.